So we're coming to the end of Q1 25 here, and it's been a pretty interesting quarter. In some ways, it's been as expected with a pretty strong M&A market, and yet there's been a whole new set of uncertainties coming into the macro picture that have had big impacts on the stock market. So first in M&A, we saw this continued momentum that really started the end of last year. And in particular in AdTech and MarTech, we saw important developments with new entrants continuing to move into the space with scaled M&A. This includes deals like Braze doing their first scale deal, acquiring OfferFit, T-Mobile acquiring two companies this quarter with Vistar and Bliss. And importantly, we saw big tech move back into scaled M&A with Google announcing their $30 billion acquisition of Wiz, clearly showing expectations of a lighter regulatory environment. But as we said, we also had all these new uncertainties coming into the market. Even as I'm filming this today, we don't have certainty on what's happening with tariffs. There's concerns about recession, consumer sentiment's very low, which has had major impacts on the stock market. In fact, in AdTech and MarTech, only a few companies were positive year to date so far, with nearly everyone down in the public markets. And some, like the Trade Desk, that missed their first quarter or their first earnings ever, were down very materially. The one thing that has not slowed down at all, and people are feeling very certain about, is the opportunity with AI. And this is something we've been thinking a lot about at LUMA. This quarter, there has been a ton of chatter in the AdTech ecosystem around AI and how it could potentially completely disrupt this ecosystem. Now, we've been thinking a lot about this, and like any good banker, when we think about AI, we decided we needed to build a framework. And so we came up with this hierarchy of AI framework for how to think about how it will come into the space. At the bottom layer is the widest and the most obvious where this is going to get impacted. This is the workflow into this ecosystem. And this sort of comes in two waves. One, clearly we have a messy, very integrated ecosystem that could use cleaning up, and AI could potentially bring a lot of efficiencies to that. Also, not just in AdTech, but across all industries, one of the big things being talked about AI is how it can actually move software capabilities into services TAM. And there's no industry quite tied to people and even people-related costs as the advertising ecosystem, especially around agencies. So there's a huge potential opportunity as the AI can come in and really bring efficiencies to that workflow and take away some of that people-driven cost. Now, that I would consider kind of the efficiency layer. The next layer up is what I would consider more the effectiveness layer. And this is where we're shifting towards outcomes. Now, in advertising, this is something we've been talking about for a long time. It's the basis of performance advertising. But with AI, that starts to become far more effective with more ability to understand and produce more creative. And we're seeing this broader shift of even other SaaS companies starting to think about how they sell not on seats and licenses, but on business outcomes. And that's an area that the AdTech ecosystem is far in advance of, having been trying to sell on these things for a long time. So big opportunities there in effectiveness and efficiency. As you move up this hierarchy, this is where things get far more uncertain. I'd say there's the first layer is the known unknowns, and this is an area around how consumers are going to actually use the internet, how we're going to navigate, what's the interface going to look like. There's expected to be a lot of changes with generative AI and using chat searches instead of search, but a lot of it is still to be determined. And then finally, with any revolutionary technology like AI, there are these unknown unknowns, and they always are new technologies, new capabilities that just did not work in a prior iteration. And at that point, we just can't predict it yet. But stay tuned, because it is something we're constantly looking out for. The other aspect to all this is the opportunity around agentic AI. And that's something that's really taken over and has potential to supercharge the acceleration of AI into this ecosystem, and something we're also paying a lot of attention to. Now, the one thing that is not getting enough conversation in this space around AI, and is critical to remember as this is coming into this ecosystem, is the concept of inertia. And this is that, yes, this technology is very powerful. Yes, it can have very disruptive forces to this space. But business inertia, especially in an ecosystem that is so interconnected, has lots of different stakeholders, means that it can often take longer than anticipated. or at least needs to be tied with those capabilities versus coming up perfectly on its own. The best example of this is actually performance CTV. Now, performance CTV is one of the hottest topics in the CTV space over the last couple of years. Yet, if you look at this slide, this is something we've been talking about for the last 8 years about democratizing TV ad spend through performance. And certainly performance capabilities are a lot stronger today than they were 8 years ago, but it was possible then. What really held it back was inertia. There weren't enough consumers watching through CTV, and more importantly, the businesses weren't ready to make that shift with their technology or with their capabilities to welcome performance advertisers and leverage the data at hand to make it happen. So yes, it's a critical capability, but AI has that same potential challenge, is that it needs to be tied with those deep business integrations in order to really scale fast. But when it does work, what's crazy about AI is that it has more operating leverage to scale much faster than anything we've seen before. In fact, if you look at these charts that a lot of VCs have been sharing of late, AI companies are now being able to scale to 100 million of ARR faster than we've seen in any generation of technology over the last 10 or 20 years. Additionally, we've seen that when it's tied with a company that has deep integrations, it can drive a lot of operating leverage even into a scaled business. AppLovin is the perfect poster child for this in the AdTech space. Over the last year, they've actually increased their revenue per employee by 60% while increasing their top line revenue 40%. So they grew a ton while becoming far more efficient. And a lot of that was the power of what they could get out of AI. It can move faster and can scale with a lot less heads once it's integrated into the right components. This is an area that is extremely exciting, and one of the areas we think will actually drive a lot of M&A in this space. You'll have both AI companies that have very fundamental technology that may want to acquire the business relationships and the integrations, and the vice versa. Companies that have a lot of scale but need to reinvent themselves. And in AI, it is definitely going to be a question of speed and the ability to acquire and do that quickly and get innovative technology could be incredibly powerful for certain incumbents. So clearly there's a lot of opportunity here with AI, but it's not just AdTech, it's also MarTech, digital content, and this full ecosystem coming together. We will continue to put out videos on where we're seeing these trends happening, but also remember you can get all of the data on the public markets and M&A in these spaces and how that's accelerating with AI in our quarterly market report. This is fully downloadable at our website, lumapartners.com.